A former Sooner legend speaks about the spring game.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com today. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams, and the spring game has become a hot topic. It's not spring yet. It's winter. We're dealing with all the winter weather in Oklahoma, but we got a hot topic because Texas Longhorns head coach Steve Sarkisian on the Up and Adams show with Kay Adams on Thursday mentioned that Texas is not going to be having a spring game. This comes just weeks after Matt Rule of Nebraska said that he was not sure if Nebraska would have a spring game. Everybody's looking at going to more NFL-like OTAs. Well, Gerald McCoy, former Sooner legend, Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Carolina Panther, Dallas Cowboy, defensive tackle crate, came out in favor of the spring game. He said the spring game, although to some players is just another practice, to others it's the only time they'll have an opportunity to perform in front of that crowd. Just sit the guys you know don't need it. Some players practice well, but when the fans show up, they can't handle the lights. This is a chance to see who's who. But also it's a chance for the alumni to fellowship, the fans to show up and have a good time. Jay, let's start with that. What's your reaction into what Gerald McCoy had to say?
I mean, one, he's not wrong. Two, that's exactly how the spring game has gone. Like, so with his example of sit the guys you don't need to play, that's typically what happens anyway. You don't typically see everybody play in the spring game, and it's usually a lot more the younger guys, which kind of gets to the point of why Matt Rule said that he's getting rid of his spring game, even though Steve Sarkisian's reason is completely different. He's pointing out that they've played like 30 games in like the last couple of years because of being able to make runs, having playoff runs or playing in playoff games. That's a lot of football for players as they're getting older, right? That's a ton of football, and adding the spring game to that could be even more. But truth be told, today, that's how it is. Most of your star players don't play in the spring game just to prevent them from getting themselves hurt. They'll practice, but they don't really play. And luckily, knock on wood, we haven't seen anything significant when it comes to injuries in the spring games and whatnot. Brent Venables and them have done a very good job of not allowing that to ruin things. But John, what Gerald is saying is exactly what happens today. But what Rule's point is that I'm playing all the young guys. Now people are eyeballing them. So having a spring practice that is still available to the people, to the fans, but not televised, I still think that's a very good idea. Now, granted, Oklahoma has not said a single thing about not having one because they're currently inviting kids to the spring game as far as recruits go. So there's a chance that they could still make it closed. But it's funny because I had somebody in our comments, I'm thinking in my comments as well, say that Oklahoma needs the money from this. What? I don't think Oklahoma needs the money from the spring game.
I don't think they need it, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have it. I think more than that, though, it's just the recruiting event that you have for that weekend. Yep. I mean, it's a big opportunity to put a lot of big-time prospects in front of Sooner Nation and show those guys, like, look at what the support looks like for a spring game. Just imagine this environment on a Saturday in the fall when Alabama's coming to town. It's an opportunity, as Gerald said, for all the alumni to get together, to continue to kind of rally that support. We've seen how much Brent Venables has done to energize the alumni group for the team. And I think that just provides another layer of excitement. And you see that alumni group getting more and more active all the time, even on social media, just discussing college football, discussing the program, discussing the future of the team. And I think that is a good thing for the program, for the fan base, to see that those guys are still bought into the program and still energized and geeked up about it. And then I do think that there is an element of getting young guys on the field in those significant snaps when it's good on good, or at least the best available that you have against your best available. I think of a guy like Grayson Halton, right? He showed out in the 2023 spring game, was just lighting it up. I think he had like 2 sacks, 5 total tackles, was just on fire. But I remember Ted Roof coming after the game saying, hey, he just needs to be more consistent. Well, we really didn't see a lot of him in that fall. He was still working to build up, but it gave everybody an idea of, okay, this is a dude that if he can put it together, can really, really help you. Well, he did the same thing in the 2024 spring game and then broke out in the 2024 season. So I think there's value to it because, like Gerald McCoy talked about, you get those guys under the lights, and sometimes guys like really break out when they get those opportunities to play in front of a big crowd. It energizes them in a different way. And it does give you an indication of, okay, who's going to step out on Saturday? Like, okay, maybe you don't practice well. Maybe you need the energy of the crowd around you to really get yourself going. And it just allows you to go to another level. And maybe not get yourself going is the right phrase, but it allows you to take your game to another level when you feel the energy of the crowd around you.
No, and I agree with you there. You want to see the players step up and show out. I mean, we saw Deion Burks do it at the last spring game. That's when we started to get ourselves excited. And, you know, he gave us what he could at the beginning of the year before things fell apart, and then he ended up injured, and then he got a concussion, and everything just didn't go our direction. But that's what you want to see. You want to see what players are going to break out and be the potential next elite player out there. So I 100% agree with you in that, and that's kind of where I don't feel like Oklahoma's going to get rid of theirs. Now, I could totally see them making it more so closed, or have like a big spring event for the fans to be able to see like a practice and just a workout or a warm-up without it being a quote-unquote spring game, to where you can eliminate a lot of the opportunities for prying eyes to be on your players. That's really what it is. And I totally agree with you. We talked about it yesterday that, you know, you should have better institutional control, I guess you could say, would be one way of saying it with lack of better terms. That you shouldn't be concerned about your players being poached. While at the same time, we just witnessed this here over the last, you know, transfer portal cycle. We got lucky, you know. R. Mason Thomas was definitely hit up for some opportunities. Jaden Jackson's mom was tweeting out about, hey, leave us alone. We're not going anywhere. Stop it.
Right.
But that happens, and schools are continuing to feed it. I always refer back to my thought on it was some schools will gladly throw a Hail Mary of all their money to one kid, just to, even if it's not to really help them as much, but more so to hurt you. There's enough schools that hate Oklahoma enough that they would do some mess like that. So that's where I am cautious when it comes to the spring game, and understand why some of these coaches are doing it. Sarkisian's reasoning because of all the games they play, I don't know. They just lost a whole bunch of players over the last 2 years. So they're not, those same dudes aren't playing. The ones that are now at the spring game, I mean, I guess if this is him anticipating that they're going to have another long run, which granted he better. I mean, heck, why are you coaching if you don't think that your team has a chance of being, you know, taking another long run? But
at the same time, like, you had 3 months from your last game in the college football playoff, and then you have another 4 months before you start the season.
Right, exactly.
What's the scrimmage going to do to wear and tear when you have that much time to prep and that much time to recover? I don't know. The last thing that Gerald said on this, he says, shoot, even the NFL has night practice showcases during training camp. Spring games are a staple in college and one of the things that separates it from the NFL. Canceling the spring game is a no-go. If that's the road we're headed down, college football will be truly lost.
And I agree with him on that. That it is a staple. This is a college thing, and a college thing that we are into. I 100% agree with him on that. And that's the one thing that we have to protect is this is something that's just a tradition of college football. Again, have a closed practice, have a spring event, bring back the legends where fans can take pictures and all of that stuff, or have them on the sidelines where they can meet the young guys and watch them go through the motions. And heck, even bring back some of the legends and let them like coach for a day. You know, let them be there to help, you know, talk through, you know, drills and things of that nature. I know the players would love that. And the school that has the most, you know, former NFL guys coming out and hanging out is perfect in the spring because NFL ain't doing nothing right now. They're doing voluntary workouts, and they're prepping for camps to come down in July. So That is the perfect opportunity for your outreach. So I totally agree with Gerald McCoy on that one.
And I would love to see more of what makes college football special stay. The game has changed so much in the last decade. I used to be a NFL is better than college guy. I'm sorry. I confess my sin to the Locked On Sooners fans. I used to be that guy. Emphasis on the used to.
Terrible.
I'm fully bought in on the idea that college football is better than the NFL in so many ways. The NFL, especially being a Dallas Cowboys fan, does not come close to matching the passion of what college football brings. Even not considering blue blood programs. I mean, you see Big 12 fan bases, Group of 5 fan bases just absolutely stoked for their teams and bringing so much energy. What I love about the spring game is it kind of gives you that first look at what the team you're going to be cheering for in the fall is going to look like. It gives you that first look as to who are going to be the stars on this team that really allow you to stand out as a program. And so I would hate to see it go. I'd hate to see it be taken off of television. I mean, more encouragement to go to the game live, I guess. So maybe you can pack the stadium with 80,000 and maybe some standing room only seats if you're not going to be able to watch it live. But anyway, I digress. I'd hate to see it go. I'd hate to not be able to watch it on TV because a lot of times I'm having to coach a soccer game and then come home and watch the spring game. It's hard to make it from Tahlequah to Norman after coaching the soccer game. So
fair point.
Anyway, that's enough we're going to say about the spring game for this week. We'll see what happens if Oklahoma makes any decisions or makes any changes to their spring game. We'll discuss it obviously here on Locked On Sooners. But coming up next, where does Oklahoma's roster rank according to Athlon Sports? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine those live bets into a same game parlay. Like right now here at the NBA, my Oklahoma City Thunder are 15-point favorites on the road against the Utah Jazz here on Friday. That's one that I could definitely jump on. And if the Thunder do what I expect them to do, might be able to make some same game parlays with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander doing something and being done by the fourth quarter. So because it's so easy to get into the action, I love the app. I can just jump in, make my picks, and boom, and get paid instantly when I win, because I win. Gosh darn it. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts for free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Steve Lasan over at Athlon Sports. I guess he's going by Steven Lasan now. It used to be Steve over at College Football News and other places, but over with Athlon Sports, ranked the rosters for the 2025 season. And your boys, the Oklahoma Sooners, came in at number 17, Jay.
Yeah, for the 2025 season, he had them at number 7 in the SEC. They're ranked in the top 10, but they took a lot of this with the average of the recruiting classes. And in that recruiting class 5-year average, Oklahoma was ranked number 5 based upon last 5 years. So that's what he's kind of playing as far as the talent goes. So Oklahoma has ranked pretty nicely there at Athlon. And the one thing he pointed out is that the Sooners have a very good chance of having a huge bounce back this year compared to last because of the returning production and the talent that is on the roster. So because Steve is seeing what I've been trying to say that I see, barring injuries, there's no reason why the Sooners didn't bounce back from that atrocious season last year.
Yeah, I mean, 17th in the nation isn't great. at the same time, that should put you on the fringe of playoff contention. It should put you in a position to be able to win 8, 9, maybe 10 games. Now, will they? That's a lot going to come down to how these guys develop in the offseason and perform on the field. And as we saw in 2024, health is going to matter. Offensive line, obviously, that is going to be the thing that we harp on all offseason long. So much about how this team performs in 2025 is going to depend on how much better the offensive line is than it was last year. But listen, a lot of it is also like Oklahoma's 2025 recruiting class being as small as it was because of the roster limitations that are coming to college football. That's playing a role in this. In each of Brent Venables' first 3 seasons in Norman, they had a top 10 recruiting class. Just this year, they took 18 kids as opposed to what some SEC schools did, which was 25, 23. One SEC program took 27 kids. So it's a vast difference, and that's going to skew the recruiting rankings a little bit. Well, Oklahoma still has a really strong blue chip percentage, according to 247 Sports. So, you look at the high school recruiting rankings, that's fine, but you're also bringing in one of the top transfer portal quarterbacks in John Mateer, or the top transfer portal quarterback, depending on who you look at. And you're bringing in some talented players on both sides of the ball. Kendall Daniels on defense. You're bringing in Derek Simmons at offensive tackle. You're bringing in some wide receiver talent that you're going to have a chance to develop and add to that competition and push your young guys. So again, so much of this is going to come down to who steps up really and who develops this offseason. But with John Mateer slinging the ball, with better offensive line play and a defense that's going to be just as good, I think, as it was last year, if not better, you got a chance to do something in 2025.
Yeah, and the rankings that they're using was from 247, the team composite ranking. So that includes recruiting as well as transfers. And I mean, granted, you're right. You're right, because that 17 is okay. It's middle of the pack. It's fringe playoff team in college football. And, it's like I said, it's not bad. It's not great. You want to be considered a top 10 roster in order to really make a jump or leap into the playoffs or even making a national championship run. But at the same time, with all the transfers that come in and out and, not knowing what these players are going to look like, kind of makes it tough to really be able to determine where these teams are going to be. But the good thing is because, just like you said, Oklahoma took a much smaller class this past class, specifically because not only with roster limitations, but they've got a ton of young players. They've got the class from 23 and 24 still there, and then you add 25, and majority of those dudes are still on the roster. So you have that development, the thing that a lot of people say that they would like to see. Where you're going to get that? When you got a lot of 23s and 24s there, that's what they're playing. They're playing the development game. They're saying, we like our classes from those years. We like those kids more than we liked what was available in the transfer portal. So we're going to continue to develop our guys. No, they weren't like just massively elite coming in as true freshmen or redshirt freshmen, but that redshirt sophomore jump, you start to see that with a lot of players. And I think that you're going to see that with Oklahoma going forward.
Well, we're seeing what the 2022 class is doing, right? Especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mentioned Grayson Halton in the first segment. Well, R. Mason Thomas, Robert Spears Jennings, those guys came out of that 2022 class. You didn't hear much from them year 1. They started getting a little bit of run year 2. Year 3, they broke out in a big, big way. Those are 3 of your best defenders on the Sooners roster in 2024. So look for those 2023 guys to start really breaking out and being significant contributors. You look at a guy like Kobe McKenzie. He's going to factor into a starting role. He's part of that 2022 class as well. Now you just got to get some of those offensive guys from that 2022 class to step up and take on a significant role. A Jacob Sexton, a Jake Taylor, a Caden Helms. It's important. A Jaden Gibson, if he can come back healthy and be the player that we saw in glimpses in 2023, then you're going to get that from him. And you got to see those 2023 guys step up because, again, 2 really highly rated recruiting classes. And you got something out of the defensive side, but you haven't gotten a lot out of the offensive recruiting at this point. It's got to get better. The development's got to be there. Those guys got to be better. But now your 2023 guys are going to get an opportunity to see some more significant time. And you're going to see the 2024 guys, because they kind of got fast forwarded a little bit in Zion Kearney and Ivan Carrion and Zion Raggins. They got bumped into significant playing time last year. Now they're going to be better prepared for 2025 because they saw so much playing time, the good and the bad. So it's a team that I think still has an upward trajectory. You just got to see all these young guys really start to take jobs like PJ Adebawari. He's got to be a significant player in the defensive line for Oklahoma for that to be considered a successful. Now's the time to start seeing him break out and have glimpses of the 5-star player that he was.
Yeah, look, this is some of the players from the 22 class, like you mentioned, that we should be excited of the fact that they're still here. I mean, you've got Jaron Canick, Gentry Williams, you still got Jake Taylor, Robert Spears Jennings, Gavin Sawchuk, Javante Barnes, R. Mason Thomas, Kip Lewis, Jaden Gibson, Grayson Halton, Kobe McKenzie, Jacob Sexton, Caden Helms. That's a lot of those 22 kids that was a salvaged class. That was the class that you salvaged because of, the old regime coming in. But just like you said, John, the 23 class is the one which we probably should go and kind of break down those players and who we think is going to be the ones that's going to break out, because they're 23 and 24. They're at the point now where they should have some breakout seasons. Somebody should jump off the screen. PJ Adebawari, something, Samuel Musigo. Someone should be jumping off the screen now and being able to say, okay, that dude's elite, because it sometimes take 2 to 3 years for some players to really develop into what you need as far as contributors go. And you can tell that Brent Venables and staff really like their recruits. So that's why we don't live in the portal like that. We get certain players when we need them, but for the most part, you can tell they like their recruits.
Yeah, and trust the process. Development is happening. Injuries has kind of stagnated some development, but you get these guys healthy like an R. Mason Thomas was in 2024, and who knows, some of these guys along the offensive line that were dinged up, a guy like Jaden Gibson who got dinged up this 3rd, 4th year, now's the time for those guys to break out. Caden Helms, if he can stay healthy all offseason, he's got the athletic ability to be a big-time player. Now we just got to see him do it. You need somebody at tight end. Why not Caden Helms? Urban Meyer had some positive things to say about Kevin Wilson. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Jay, the Kevin Wilson hire was a big one for the Oklahoma Sooners. Even as an analyst, I think it provides a lot for the Sooners. And we discussed what Bob Stoops had to say about it the other day. We've shared our thoughts on a number of occasions, but let's hear what Urban Meyer said about Kevin Wilson. He says, I can't think of a better guy that, first of all, people love in Oklahoma, Meyer said to the Oklahoman. And second, a more experienced, knowledgeable coach to help with the young coordinator. I've got a lot of respect for Kevin, so I'm not surprised. I think it's a great fit. He's arguably the best practice coach I've had. He's an offensive line guy by trade, and that's where his eyes go. I've never had a coach do that. It just made so much sense to me, but you've got to be out of your mind to stand right there during practice, and he did.
Look, we said that about the hire and why we saw that it was significant, and that's exactly it. Practice. Having a guy to be able to do not only advanced scouting for you that has the experience he has, working in the Big Ten for the many years he did, as well as some of the more potent offenses in college football in the early 2000s. Kevin Wilson has that experience that can be passed down to a Ben Arbuckle, and Brent Venables can leverage as far as the advanced scouting portion goes. Like we said, Kevin Johns was doing that job before, and now that he's moved over into Oklahoma State as a quarterback coach, Kevin Wilson can step in as a veteran guy to help out. It never hurts having someone with experience on the field, someone that's really good at, just advanced scouting the opposing team and being able to let you know what to look for, what trends to catch. That's why Urban Meyer said that. He's one of the best practice coaches he ever had. That's high praise for a coach, for a head coach that's won national championships to say that. To me, that is the big deal that Kevin Wilson brings to the table. And beating the dead horse, sure, but hey, I'm excited about the fact that you've got a guy in the room that can really be in there. And he's not going to walk in and try to take all the air out of it. He knows that that's not what his role for that is. He's going to come in and actually be helpful, and everyone's going to want to collaborate with him. That's a big deal.
Well, and the fact that he sees the game from the inside out, that screams SEC ball, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to be good in the trenches. on both sides of the football. We know Brent Venables, Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis have done that on the defensive side. They've created a defensive line that's ready to compete and contend in the SEC. You've got a front seven with your linebacker core that's really, really good. Now you just need that on the flip side. You need the offensive line to catch up to what the defensive line's doing. And if Kevin Wilson can see some things and help the offensive line development, that's going to be huge for what this offense can do. And helping kind of bridge the gap between Ben Arbuckle and Bill Bedenbaugh as a former offensive coordinator in Kevin Wilson, being able to kind of speak all the languages and merge the two together. And I think it's just going to be a great fit. And it's one of those situations that anytime that you can have an experienced guy like this, that's had such productive offenses at a number of stops, it can only benefit you and it can only help you. And I think beyond just the game management thing, which a lot of people are focusing on, that's going to matter come the fall. These next 6 months are going to be even more important because you got to get these guys developed and you got to figure out who's your starting five along the offensive line, and having another set of eyes to help Bill Bedenbaugh evaluate that group. That's going to be huge, man.
Yeah, that's going to be massive. And that's what Kevin Wilson's going to give you. Just like I said, those additional eyes on the inside out. I'm excited to see his contributions to that quarterback room too, right? Like I sense that even though John Kuzieski as well as Ben Arbuckle probably got that locked up, I'm sensing they're probably going to bring in Wilson for those conversations. Just like we talked about when he first got the hire. The big thing is he was a part of the team when they had 2 Heisman Trophy winners. He can let you know the type of things that those players did in order to prepare themselves or be able to win that prestigious award. He was there. He saw the work ethic. He saw what they did to prepare. He can slide that additional advice and say, hey, these are some things that these players did in preparation. These are things that you can do as well. Because honestly, the one thing that's probably not different from back then to today is really the way you study film and understand the trends and the habits of the opposition on the other side of the field. It's all about how you study the film and be able to break it down. And I mean, it's going to do nothing but help John Mateer as well as Michael Hawkins as the young quarterback as he's preparing to really, get himself together in preparation for his time to take over again. Yeah.
And again, it's just another voice that Brent Venables trusts.
Yes.
And that's not to say that he doesn't trust Ben Arbuckle. It's just, you've got a guy in Kevin Wilson that he's got a long relationship with, a long history with, and they had a lot of success together from 2002 to 2010. So that kind of stuff matters. I mean, the relationships matter. Having voices in the headset that you're familiar with and you're comfortable with, all that stuff matters. I mean, it's weird to say it, but it kind of does. And again, this is a guy that's had a lot of success at a lot of places across the college football landscape. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. Follow me at John 9 Williams. You can also read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.